Hey everybody, this is part 4 of my PlayStation 3 Collection video. For those of you who haven't watched the first 3 parts, I basically am splitting up my PlayStation 3 Collection video because I don't want you guys sitting here for 2 full hours. It's just too long. And I ultimately also decided to split it up as some of my games have complete boxes like this game right here, but I also have a whole bunch of games that you see right here that are just loose copies. And for this video specifically, I'll only be covering the loose copies that I have. I'll possibly cover all my digital copies in a future video, but that remains to be seen. But anyways, let's actually get started. So first game we have is Batman Arkham City Game of the Year Edition. This was one of the first PlayStation 3 games I had, and I gotta say, it was a fantastic game. It really was. The thing that really stuck out to me was just the amount of voice lines that were playing. Like whenever you were gliding around as Batman, you'd constantly hear the criminals talking amongst each other, and I was impressed by just uh, how much dialogue there was uh, in between all the gliding. Of course, that's not the only thing that's great about the game. You know, there's there's so much to love about it, both in both in the both in the story and also the challenge mode, which admittedly can get a little repetitive, um, but hey, it was still really fun. Now, obviously, the Game of the Year edition contains all the DLC, so you don't have to worry about that having to buy anything extra. I will say though, regardless of which version you have, regardless of which console you have, I still would recommend the PS3 version if that's your only option. If you have any other console, then sure, get the other version. But if you somehow in the year 2024 still don't have anything past the PS3, uh, I'd still recommend this. It's still an excellent game. Just be careful with the PS4, Xbox One. Yeah. A lot of the other versions outside of the original release have some issues. Like the Return to Arkham remaster, they changed up a lot of stuff because they used a different engine, so everything doesn't look quite right. It looks higher quality, but it doesn't mesh together very well. And of course, there's the Switch port that came out last year, which was a bit wobbly, especially with its sequel Arkham Knight, which runs horribly and costs full price, by the way, which is not good. And then the Wii U version has the shock gloves, and it's the only version that has the shock gloves in the story mode. No other version actually has it, although the Switch version did contain the Armored Edition costume, and that's the only version I can think of that actually has the Armored Edition costume. No other like no other version outside the Switch port and Wii U version has the armored Batman costume. But yeah, that's Batman Arkham City. Um, Next up, we have a game that I frankly um, didn't really play much of. It's called Brink. This game apparently was a flop to say the very least. I remember actually getting this back in 2017 originally, um, because it came with a Bluetooth headset. It came bundled with a Bluetooth headset, but um, I think I even did an unboxing video with it many years ago. And the only reason I got it was because of the Bluetooth headset that came with it, and that was it. I don't even know if I can even find any matches anymore, especially since this was ultimately an unsuccessful game. Um, Given that we haven't seen a sequel since. Uh, and speaking of sequels, we got Destiny. More specifically, the very first Destiny game, which came out uh, on PlayStation 3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PC back in 2014. It's been almost 10 full years since this game came out. and interestingly enough, you can still play it on PS3. I I'm sure there's very few people on there, but there's got to be some. This is It's interesting to note that they released every single expansion except the very last expansion on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, simply because of hardware limitations. So when the final expansion came out, basically your save files would not transfer over. Whatever progress you made on like last gen consoles was no longer tied to next gen consoles, which is rather unfortunate. I think they did compensate you in some way. I don't know if they gave you like the next gen version for free, sadly, but I think they did give you something. Um, I almost actually bought Destiny on PS3 back then, but I'm glad I didn't because um, obviously I would have been stuck playing the outdated version of the game. And also, I have tried repeatedly to get into Destiny 2 over the years, and I, especially since it went free to play, but I just couldn't quite get into it. It's not very beginner friendly, sadly, which is sad because clearly a lot of people like the game, or a dedicated amount of people are still willing to play the game. Uh, we even uh, we even have some more content coming to the game right now, although I'm curious to see how long it's going to last. I mean, again, we are approaching the 10-year mark, so I wonder of the franchise in general. And the sequel came out about 7 years ago, so I'm curious as to when we're going to get Destiny 3, if ever. I mean, we were originally supposed to get 10 years worth of Destiny games. Like, I think the contract with Activision and Bungie was that they were supposed to get like a Destiny 3 and 4, but that never happened because Activision cut their losses and decided to end the contract early. But we'll see. We'll see when we get there. Um, PlayStation Move Heroes. This was not a very good game from what I've heard. It's like a crossover game that heavily relied on the PlayStation Move. Really, I think the only reason I got it was just because it was PlayStation Move title, and that was it. Not much else to say. Next up, we have the PS3 copy of LA Noire. I actually bought this on the Switch a while ago, but then I traded that copy, which I kind of regret because it had all the DLC on it, and I don't know if you can even get the DLC for the PS3 version anymore because there was some DLC, and I heard this is actually a pretty good game, although um, we've yet to see a sequel to this since I don't think the remaster sold very well, sadly. Next up, we have The Saboteur, which was done by Pandemic Games and published by EA. Um, yeah, I can't remember what Pandemic did. I know I can't off the top of my head remember, but they worked on some high profile franchise, but then they got shut down by EA, I think. I don't know about the Saboteur. I kind of just bought this because it was cheap, I think, and that was really it. And speaking of cheap, I also got I got this Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. This is by Criterion Games, published by EA. This was, from what I understand, one of the better Need for Speed games. A lot of the more recent games, unfortunately, have not been received very well by fans and critics alike. And Hot Pursuit was one of the last ones, aside from Most Wanted, and I think maybe Rivals that did well. It actually got a remaster fairly recently on Switch and other consoles, but I think they were actually missing some songs because of licensing issues. So, um, if you don't mind the game being less visually appealing, I guess go for the old version just because it may have some songs that are no longer available in the new release. Oh yeah, I know. It's also worth mentioning this game when this game came out for the Wii. Um, yeah, the Wii version was completely different. So yeah, if you're like a Nintendo, um, or more specifically, if you've only been playing on Nintendo consoles, you kind of got screwed over a bit because the Wii version I heard was completely different and wasn't as good. I don't know about the soundtrack, but yeah, you did eventually get the better version of Hot Pursuit. It's just that that version doesn't have all the songs from the original release, sadly. But I guess it's nice that we actually got it at all. I've actually been meaning to collect all the Need for Speed games since they are actually, from what, especially the older ones, since I have heard they're actually pretty good. Next up, this is a franchise I don't have a lot of experience with. I've only ever played Resident Evil Revelations on 3DS, and that's it. That is, and this we have this right here is Resident Evil 5 Gold Edition, which I do believe comes with all the DLC. I'm not, I, or at least most of it. I'm not too sure on that. I know it did get remastered on PS4 and Xbox One, and I think it's also called the Gold Edition there, but I'm not too sure. But yeah, Resident Evil 5. I hear this game, depending on who you ask, is where the franchise started to go downhill a bit, as it started embracing more action-oriented gameplay as opposed to the more, I guess, survival horror style of gameplay that previous entries had. I remember there was some controversy about the game taking place in Africa, which, um, isn't necessarily that big of a deal, I guess. Uh, at this point in time, we've just gotten Resident Evil 4 remake just last year, so I suspect Resident Evil 5 at some point is going to get a remake. They've been going back and remaking all the previous Resident Evil games, so I suspect we should be getting an announcement on Resident Evil 5 soon. Um, and who knows, maybe Code Veronica will get remade next, because I know that even though that's not a numbered entry in the franchise, it's still supposedly an important entry nonetheless. And I think, with that said, I do think Resident Evil 6 probably needs to remake the most, since I hear that game is where the franchise really went downhill for a lot of people, and but fortunately Capcom managed to turn things around with the seventh entry back in 2017, uh, which is good because you really, it's always a shame whenever a franchise goes downhill and then just never recovers, never lives up to its full potential. I'm not sure if I will be playing this game anytime soon. I mean, I have it here in my collection, so I could play it, but when it comes to the story, I'm not. I know the story isn't the greatest or meant to be the focus. It's the gameplay, but still, it's. When I played Revelations, I had a hard time understanding the story because I didn't, I don't know these characters or their backstories very well, nor did I grow up with any of the other games. Because I'll be honest, the horror genre isn't necessarily for me. But yeah, that's enough about Resident Evil. Let's move on to Sleeping Dogs. I've been told that this is basically um, Grand Theft Auto, but Chinatown version of it. Unfortunately, uh, this game I don't think did that well, I know it got a PS4 release, but I don't think that. Yeah, I think the developers actually got shut down. So sadly, we'll probably never get a sequel to this, which is unfortunate because we could really use really use some Grand Theft Auto could really use some competition right about now, especially since Saints Row is effectively dead. Like that franchise has been um, is basically gone as far as I can tell because the studio that made it, the developer that made it, sorry, just got shut down. So unless another developer takes over, we're not getting another Saints Row game. Next up, we have Killzone 2. Now, I'm going to be honest, I had a hard time with this game when I first played it. I actually liked Killzone 1 when I first played it on PS2. Um, but Killzone 2, oof, I had a hard time enjoying this because your movement feels heavy, but what I didn't necessarily know at the time or realize at the time, the frame rate, the screen tearing, and also the latency were not great at all. Like this is this game apparently has like the highest level of latency for one of the highest level of latency for like a first person shooter, especially compared to its contemporaries like Modern Warfare 2. Yeah, it was not great, and from a technical standpoint, I mean, I managed to finish the game at the end of the day, but oof, that final encounter with what was the name, Raditz or Rat? I forgot his name, but the final boss, oof, was a real pain in the butt. I had to actually look up how to beat it, and yeah, it was a real turn off. I mean, maybe if I play it now, I'll enjoy it, but gonna be honest, I barely. It was a bit of a slog getting through this game. I know a lot of other people really like this game, but oof, for me, I actually enjoyed Killzone 3 more than Killzone 2. At least for the first time I played it, anyways. Next up, we have Resistance 3. I have the first two games, box copies of, to be more specific, but the third game, unfortunately, I don't have a box for, unfortunately. So it's just sitting here. I think I remember seeing commercials for this, or I think it was a movie called District 9. I kept associating it with this game for some reason. I don't remember exactly. And before I forget, I remember Killzone 2 actually. You'd see so dozens of what must have been like a half a dozen or a dozen copies of this game selling very cheaply. There's just so many of these selling for like I think 4.99 because they just had so many copies of this game. And in the case of and going back to Resistance 3, I remember there was actually a triple pack for this with Resistance 1 and 2, um, which I never got. I think this game I remember was one of the games that are compatible with PlayStation Move or advertised with PlayStation Move compatibility, but obviously PlayStation Move is kind of became more of a fad. Or okay, you still I guess use it with PSVR VR2, I think. I'm not too sure. I don't use PSVR, so I don't know. But yeah, this is one of those other franchises that got abandoned by Sony, unfortunately. Um, I think there was going to be a fourth game, but plans for that just got canceled. And chances are we're probably not going to get another game in this franchise just because Insomniac these days are working on the Spider-Man franchise and Wolverine, and they're busy with much more busy with Ratchet and Clank. Unfortunately, video games simply just take a lot more time and money to make, and um, I guess Resistance, the franchise in general, just wasn't isn't as viable as the other big blockbuster ones. As Sony is currently um, pretty obsessed with those nowadays, much to the detriment of other franchises. But let's move on. And once again, we have another abandoned franchise, Watch Dogs. You'll notice that this game has a blue banner at the bottom. I remember they tried to rebrand PlayStation 3 games with this blue banner instead of the traditional black one that they have. They stopped doing it after a couple games. Well, I I'm not sure why they even did it to begin with. Maybe to have some level of consistency, but and I'll be honest, I actually like it. I actually like the blue color, but um, they just stopped doing it after a while. Only a few games actually had it. This and MLB and something else, can't remember. But as for Watch Dogs itself, I remember this game generated a lot of controversy because it didn't look as good as the trailers had depicted it as, and more specifically, and I remember specifically the Wii U version actually got delayed quite a bit, and we never even got the DLC for the game we never got the Wii U version. Never got all the DLC either. They just pushed it back 6 months, and for for unexplained reasons or some reason that I can't remember, and they didn't bother to giving providing all the DLC for that game or that version of the game. They were like marketing the benefits the of having the Wii U, of the features of the Wii U, but when it came time to actually releasing it, it kind of just came and went. We did get a couple sequels, but and it got a little more, I guess more cartoonish, up a little bit more cartoonish or much more lighthearted. I mean, the third game literally lets you play as anybody, including an old lady. That was kind of like a selling feature of the game, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's did well because I think the Watch Dogs franchise has now been like discontinued, which is unfortunate. Um, it's like I said, always a shame when a franchise never just fall like declines and then just never reaches its full potential. And speaking of which, and speaking of franchises falling off, we have Skylanders Giants. I think I must have bought this with in a bundle because I didn't really need this. But yeah, already have Skylanders Giants for like the Wii, and I wanted to be consistent with the game, so I wanted to get it all on like one platform, but I just happened to get this one. Um, yeah, this is the second entry in the franchise, and of course, as we know, Skylanders got like six games in total, and then actually now that I think about it, oh yeah, yeah. Since we're yeah okay yeah as it okay yeah it turns out yeah I have two Skylanders games on PS3 actually. Skylanders Giants and Imaginators, the last entry before the franchise got discontinued in 20 after the Switch release in 2017. But anyways, yeah, we got six entries in this franchise in the span every single year between 2011 and then to 2016. Originally, Activision pitched it as an exclusive for for Nintendo platforms, but Nintendo wasn't interested, so they made a multi-platform game, and they made a ton of money on it out of this. And but unfortunately, it went the way of Guitar Hero in that they they just kept pumping out they kept pumping out games and figures, and I think parents had basically reached their breaking point because they have all these figures now, and now they want parents continuing to buy games, these really expensive starter bundles, I should say, every single year with brand new toys, which are just alternate versions of existing toys in some cases. And I think by 2016 they just had enough, and it didn't help that other companies were jumping in on the Toys to Life fad, including Nintendo with their own amiibo lines, Lego Dimensions, Disney Infinity. So the franchise just basically came to an end, which is rather unfortunate for those who enjoy the games. I've actually played two of the games on 3DS, which interestingly enough are completely different to the console versions. They actually made five of the six games available on 3DS, and they are all completely different to the console versions, except except the last game released on 3DS, which ended up getting ported over to the Wii, which is interesting. But yeah, Skylanders. Maybe originally it was supposed to be a spin-off of Spyro the Dragon, but then it kind of just became its own thing. And I, there are rumors that they're potentially gonna bring it back, except maybe not have the whole Toys to Life aspect. Just let us play as all the figures from the get go. But who knows? I mean, they that depends on what Microsoft wants to do with the franchise, because now they have the franchise, um, but they also laid off a whole bunch of employees as well after acquiring Activision. So it remains to be seen how the franchise is going to turn out. Not to mention the original developers of the franchise, Toys for Bob's, just went independent. So really we don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, that's Skylanders. Next up, we got Little Big Planet 2. This is not the Game of the Year edition, unfortunately. Uh, I kind of missed the boat on the Little Big Planet franchise, sadly. So I think the servers are shut down because of all the modding and hacking that's been happening. So they just decided, you know what, let's just shut it down. It's a mess already. We don't want to fix it, especially since PlayStation 3 games are not backwards compatible natively with PS4 or 5. But that's aside from the point. Point is, this franchise um, is going dormant now, sort of. I mean, we did have Sackboy's uh, Little Adventure or whatever, that spin-off game, uh, 3D platformer game a couple years ago, but that's basically it as far as I can tell. Next up, we have Turok. Now, I actually have uh, the original games on like I actually got a couple or so of these games on PC thanks to Amazon Prime, my Amazon Prime subscription, or more specifically like Prime Gaming, which is actually really nice to have. They give out free games just for having an Amazon Prime subscription, so you get codes for games on GOG, Epic Game Store, and even Amazon's own gaming launcher, which which I have. I know people would rather it be on Steam, but okay, whatever. It's a free game, and yeah, I have the original N64 games, which were eventually recently got ported to PC, and this is the 2008 reboot or revival of the franchise, and I don't think it did well because we clearly did not get a sequel to this. Next, okay, we're getting close to the end now. We have Gran Turismo 6. I also have Gran Turismo 5 here, but yeah, this is the sixth entry and also the last one on PlayStation 3. This one actually came out the year that the PlayStation 4 came out, and surprisingly, they did not make this game on for the PlayStation 4 at launch, which I find a bit odd. And now, same for The Last of Us. Although in the case of The Last of Us, we did eventually get a PS4 remaster, but Gran Turismo 6, yeah, we did not get a PS4 release at launch, which is a bit weird, especially now since they'd rather just uh, make cross-gen titles since game development has ballooned in cost these days. So yeah, it's a bit odd, and it also doesn't help that this game does also did not run that well on PS3 as far as I recall. It had a lot of screen tearing. But yeah, Gran Turismo 6. I'm going to be honest, I haven't really gotten into the franchise. I had a copy of Gran Turismo 4 on PS2 years ago, um, but I never could get into it. So I actually traded it. Kind of wish I still had it now, though, just so I could uh, try it out on my PS2 since I have an HD TV now. I didn't have an HD TV at the time, so I couldn't. I could not run the game. I couldn't try out the signature, the one cool feature of that game, which allowed you to run the game at 1080i, which is like one of the four games that actually allowed you to do that on PS2. But yeah, that's Gran Turismo 6. Next up, we have Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. This one I actually got was pulled out of a console apparently that I had bought and tried to get repaired. Unfortunately, they could not repair it, and apparently, yeah, this was stuck in the disc tray. I had no idea that this was inside there. But yeah, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I think I previously owned this through the. Oh yeah, I did. I had the America's Collection disc several years ago, but then I think yeah, I traded or sold that copy. I almost wish I didn't, but at the same time, we now have uh, the America's Collection on Switch, which comes with the Freedom Cry DLC, like the license for that on the cartridge. So, and this does not have that. I hear this one's actually one of the better games in the franchise. It's like before the franchise kind of went downhill, sadly. I know they're trying to make a comeback right now with Assassin's Creed Mirage, but apparently it did. I don't know how well it. I don't think it did as well as it should have because it was a full price release. Sorry, it was a yeah. They were selling Mirage at like full price, and I don't know if some people felt it was worth the full price, especially since I think Mirage was like going to be a DLC for Valhalla. But getting back to Black Flag, this game was considered one of the best pirate games. Period. They did try to make a spiritual successor, Skull and Bones, recently, which failed, which is really sad because it's made by Ubisoft. It's still, or at the very least published by the same company, and you have a problem when a game from 10 years ago has better gameplay than a game released right now. That is not a good thing. Um, one last thing. I actually remember seeing a copy of this bundled with I think Assassin's Creed Brotherhood many years ago. I actually almost convinced my mom to get it, but then I decided to get it against getting it at the last minute. Um, it was like a double pack, and I remember back at the time it also had it was advertised on the box that you had 60 minutes of PlayStation exclusive content. I can't remember what that content was, but they were and unfortunately still are pretty crazy about that at Ubisoft, about having all these different versions of the game at launch, like the gold edition or cosmic edition or whatever that comes with the season pass or extra content that you can't get in the other version. So, and even if you get like the highest tier version, you don't get like certain bonuses. It's just a mess. But like I said, there is a Switch version. I think it has everything now. So I guess I might end up getting that instead when I get to Assassin's Creed 4. I'm still stuck on Assassin's Creed 2 right now, and I don't know when I'm gonna finish that, especially since it's been 10 years since I first got Assassin's Creed 2. Um, but we'll see. Next up, we have and yeah, last loose copy game, and last physical that I have for PS3, Anarchy Reigns. This was developed by Platinum Games and published by Sega back when they were working with Sega. Uh, until they started in publishing the stuff themselves, starting very recently. This was released back in 2013, around the same year that they did Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, and this game did not review very well, sadly. And uh, I actually remember picking this up for like $2 previously. Like it was in complete in box, brand new, $2. But then I tried it out for a bit, couldn't really get into it, and then I traded it away or sold it or something. And now I rebought it, and I tried it again, and yeah, I'm not really that into it. I might give it another chance, but try, but I don't have high hopes. But yeah, that's gotta be careful with how I hold these discs. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I have a total of 19 loose copy games here that don't have cases. Um, if you can, yeah, take a look to my left over here. We have a stack of complete in box cases of games, and this is how high that stack would have been if they actually had cases. In fact, some of these actually did have cases, but then I swapped them out with games because I actually printed out some box art. So I just took out the GameStop, the generic GameStop box art, and just replaced it with the ones I printed for the games that had box art online. So most of these games, unfortunately, did not have box art online, so I could not put them in the case. And I gave the case to some other games. And if you watch my previous video, you'll notice some of the cases don't look quite right. And yeah, uh, that's because I printed the cases, box art. Sorry. But yeah, that pretty much does it for this video, and pretty much all my physical collections, assuming you've been watching all 4 parts. If you haven't, I recommend going and seeing them. But if you don't care for that and just only want to see the loose copies, yeah, that pretty much does it for all the loose copies I have. I don't think I paid too much for all these. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think I couldn't have paid any too much. Yeah, I don't think I paid any more than like maybe $5 for most of them. So I didn't lose. So night. So yeah, at most I think I paid maybe 100 for this whole stack. Maybe I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. But in any case, that's pretty much it for my physical PlayStation 3 collection. I may go do a video on my digital collection, but I'm very hesitant to do so because, of course, it really just means I'm going to stick my camera in front of the TV because I don't think I want to necessarily pull out um, and connect my capture card because I've had issues in the past with that, and not to mention I have to pull out I think a total of 4 consoles just to capture footage. So that's going to be a real hassle. And but that of course depends on how well this video does. And if it does well, I'll definitely do that one uh, sooner than later. But as for now, as always, guys, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.